Hi, everyone. It's me, Krylios, Team Racing Productions MC and producer. And today I have a special guest joining me, Patricia Eguino. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here, Krylios.
Thank you. It's certainly a pleasure to have you here. Now, for our viewers, could you go ahead and introduce yourself and, tell us who you are?
Sure. So my role is as board director and chair of the outreach committee of the DC Latino Caucus. And I also work with the organization Community Organized Relief Effort, which works with DC Health in order to do more COVID-19 vaccination outreach.
Oh, thanks so much for being here today with us. And I'm so happy to talk about, to get into our conversation today. And, I want to start out with the last thing you just talked about and touched on, and that is, of course, COVID-19 and, outreach for this pandemic. We are now in a new phase of this pandemic. We've been, going through it now for far past a year and a half, and we're now in this new phase. What is important right now for people to know and for people to do as we are still here stuck in the mire of this pandemic?
I think one of the first things people should be aware of is not to take this pandemic lightly. I know that there are a lot of people who I've read online and who have told me in person who don't take it as seriously because they say that it only, quote unquote, affects older people and affects people with immunocompromised systems. But I would like to tell them that that is not the case. I can say that both on a professional and on a personal level, because I got COVID-19 last year, actually, at the very start of the pandemic. And it was the sickest that I have ever been in my entire life.
Wow.
I was barely conscious those 2 weeks that I was ill. I was with a high fever. It was back in the March of 2020, and I'm someone who works out 5 days a week and who is in my 30s, and yet it hit me extremely hard. So I want to let everyone know who is also in the 20 to 30 year range, not to take it for granted and not to think that they'll be okay if they don't get vaccinated, because that COVID-19 was the worst I've ever felt in my life.
Certainly. And speaking of vaccinations, that's very important to make sure that, we can achieve some level of normalcy at a certain point, talk about the importance of vaccinations. We hear, so many people saying so many different things. And I know growing up, there were none of these, all these different thoughts and opinions about immunizations for anything. People went and got their regular MMR, immunizations, and when they had their chicken pox, they had their polio, they had their TB, but for this one, people are just, there's a lot of hesitancy around that. What can we do to make sure that our communities understand how important these vaccinations are for the wider health of the community and our society?
So I think one thing that should be that can be done to have a bigger outreach in terms of getting more people to get vaccinated, and I'm talking mostly about the Latino community, is that there should be more Spanish translated COVID-19 vaccination information. There isn't, to be honest, there isn't as much as there should be. That's why whenever I'm on a COVID-19 vaccination pop-up clinic, I send my tweets out in Spanish, letting them know that there's a clinic that has someone who speaks in Spanish. And that's also another thing, that there are people who might hesitate to get vaccinated because there's no one there on site who speaks Spanish. There's no one there who can explain to them in layman's terms in Spanish about the various concerns and questions that they might have, which is like one of the biggest reasons why I've done so much COVID-19 vaccine outreach, because Spanish is my first language. So for one thing, more Spanish COVID-19 like vaccination information, more people who can speak Spanish in all these COVID-19 vaccination pop-up clinics and pharmacies. And another thing would be to just be much more open to questions. People have legitimate concerns because this pandemic affected so many lives all of a sudden, very suddenly. And I can see why a vaccine that was accelerated in production, and it is a safe vaccine. There's a reason why I think that there might be some hesitancy. And
Certainly.
I think one should not dismiss people who come up to them and, and tell them that they're dumb or they're stupid. I think you should answer their questions as directly and honestly as possible.
Certainly, certainly. And another area that you're really passionate about, especially when it comes to outreach within the Hispanic community, is about, voter participation and elections. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. So that's something that I'm doing quite a bit as the chair of the outreach committee. Is to get in touch with Latinos and Latinas and just talking to them and trying to ask them what issues that they care about the most, and obviously talk to them in Spanish. I think having face-to-face communication, obviously in a safe manner, wearing masks and everything and keeping 6 feet apart, having a genuine conversation with more Latinos and letting people know about the DC Latino Caucus, which is an organization that will help more Latinos get much more engaged in the political process. And it is a bit disheartening that there's so many Latinos who have never heard of the DC Latino Caucus. So my job is to let them know that estamos aquí, we're here, and we want to vote.
Yes, I love that. And, those who don't know, of course, they can come out to the upcoming DC Latino Caucus General Meeting. Tell me a little bit about that.
Right. So on September 21st, we have our DC Latino Caucus General Meeting. Council member Brian Nadeau will be there, and she will talk about the Local Resident Voting Rights Amendment Act of 2021. And this amendment that she will talk about is to have permanent legal residents of DC to be able to vote. So I think it would be groundbreaking, and I'm very excited about it. So, and it's going to be an online meeting, so anyone can join. I highly encourage everyone to join on September 21st. And I think it'll be a wonderful conversation to have. And it's something that more Latinos have asked me about. How can I get more involved with the DC Latino Caucus? Well, 21 de septiembre, just join us.
Certainly. Anything else that you're really, really passionate about that, especially with things going on right now, that we've seen all across the country that's, been on your heart?
Right. So one of the things that I've done quite a bit, and something that I fight and have been fighting for a long time, is my I've been very concerned about the rising white supremacy that has been happening during the Trump presidency and is still happening to this day, especially when we see what's happening in the news with Oregon. The Proud Boys are gathering in more numbers there, but they did come to DC back in November, back in December, and back in January 6th. And I was there to protest them at every opportunity that they came here. And it was quite one of the most intense experiences of my life. But I think that it is very important that whenever any kind of white supremacy comes to the city, to be there and fight it. And I know that it can be quite dangerous, since I protest on my own, and I wouldn't encourage anyone to to go up to them and protest on their own. But I'm very passionate about that. So that's something.
Certainly. And listen, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing within your community, within our community, to make sure that, you know, we can all come together, get healthy as a community, get voting as a community, have our voices be heard as a community. Really, really important work. So for people who want to follow you and keep up with you and all the things that you're doing, how can they go about and do that?
So people can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And also, if you want to join the DC Latino Caucus, they also have Twitter, which you can see on the prior image with Brian Nadeau.
Certainly. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Before I let you go, I want to remind everyone, especially since we talked about voting today, that if you want to check your voter status and to make sure that you are ready, you can text Team Racine to 40649. Pledge to vote, check your status, and register to vote. Once again, that's Team Racine to 40649. Patricia, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day.
I hope you have a wonderful day too, and thank you. Hasta luego, todos.
Hasta luego. To all our viewers, thank you for watching. Bye.
Adios.